25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. When I was younger, Robin, I played guitar in bars.
Yep.
I was in a lot of bars.
Yep.
And then I graduated to lounges. And then I graduated to nightclubs. And I don't even know the difference. I just know they paid more. And yet I am not in any way an educated drinker. I'm not a drinker at all. And so on my bucket list is, okay, one of these days I'm going to do the thing that you've done all your life, Robin, and understand the beauty of the mixed drink, right?
Yes, they're fabulous.
Okay, and you already know what a Manhattan is. I don't even know what it is. I know where it is.
Yes.
I grew up outside of Manhattan.
Yeah, my son works there.
He works there. Yeah. So we are going to talk about that. Let's see. On the phone, we have, let's see, where are my notes here? Philip Greene, am I right about that?
Yes.
He is the co-founder of a museum called the Modern Cocktail. The Museum of the, really?
I love that.
He presented at the Smithsonian and the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., the Astor Center, the Dead Rabbit in New York, Dead Rabbit.
Yeah, that's a popular place.
Really? Miami Rum Renaissance, Tales of the Cocktail in New Orleans, the Manhattan Cocktail Classic. The big bar that I played in, or nightclub, was called, oh gosh, it was Christine's in the Bronx. No, in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
I have no idea if it was a big deal.
Maybe he knows where that is.
He's a James Beard award-winning mixologist. I think he's been with us before. Philip Greene. Good morning, Philip. How are you?
Morning. How are you? It's the James Beard Award is actually was given to the fellow who wrote my foreword, Dale DeGroff. I can't claim credit for that, but
Okay. Are you
someday maybe.
Have you been on this show before? I think you have.
I was down in Gainesville a couple of years ago, but I don't think I've been on the Ocala show.
Oh, okay. So you wrote a book, the story of the first modern cocktail, the Manhattan. So is it really the first? How do you define a cocktail? What is a cocktail?
Good question. In 1806, the cocktail was defined for the first time in a newspaper in Hudson, New York, as spirits of any kind, sugar, water, and bitters. And that's sort of how cocktail geeks define a cocktail. So something like a gin and tonic might not be a cocktail per se, but who cares? It's all sort of the
I gotcha.
the etymology of the word. But so for most of the 19th century, the cocktail was more or less the old-fashioned, because that's what an old-fashioned is. It's whiskey, some Angostura bitters, a little splash of water, and ice. Some spirits of any kind, sugar, water, and bitters. Around 1840, 1850, you started to see imports. Just like we had immigration, you had imports of different products, and you started to see a product that was invented in 1786 by a fellow named Antonio Benedetto Carpano. And he was the father of this amazing product called vermouth, sweet vermouth from Torino, Italy. So you start seeing that being introduced to cocktail menus around the country, usually by itself or with a couple of bitters. But in the 1870s, and we're not sure exactly where, but we believe it was in Manhattan. There are a number of theories that I talk about in my book. Somebody thought, let's add sweet vermouth to the old-fashioned. So we have whiskey, bitters, and the introduction of sweet vermouth, and boom, it's called the Manhattan. It takes off like a rocket. Everyone then looks around and says, what else can we do with this stuff called vermouth? Let's add it to gin. And you have the martini or the Martinez. Let's try scotch. You have the Rob Roy. Let's try rum. You have the Palmetto or the Plimpton. So you had this amazing amount of innovation in the 1870s, 80s, 90s, turn of the century, based on the inclusion of vermouth into the cocktail. So it's considered the first modern cocktail that sort of graduated from the original old-fashioned formula.
That is interesting. Okay, now I want to go back to my years as an entertainer, because I'm going to, up front, the two people you're talking to, Robin and I, she knows way more about drinks than I'll ever know. But I always had a question about bars, and maybe your answer is going to be about the bartenders. Okay, so let me start with McDonald's. If I go to McDonald's in Ocala and get a cheeseburger, it's going to taste exactly like the McDonald's in Chicago. They've got it down to a science. But if I go to a bar called Joe's Bar in Ocala, it's not going to be anything like Joe's Bar in Milwaukee or Joe's Bar in Long Island or something, right?
Unless they're a chain.
Okay, so are there chain bars? I guess that's where I was going with that.
You do have chain bars. You also have places like Bennigan's and TGI Fridays and
okay.
restaurants that that they might have their own signature drink that is going to be made consistently across.
Oh,
the
okay,
board.
and
You're
that's
absolutely right. But it's like saying, well, I went to this restaurant and ordered a hamburger, and it was this way, and at that restaurant, the hamburger. So you have sort of general names for what that bartender or that restaurant's conception of a Manhattan might be.
Yeah, you picked up on what I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask about the bartender because the kid behind the counter at the McDonald's knows how to make the hamburger based on what his boss told him.
Right.
Bartender is actually a class in college. It's a college course.
It can be. I mean, it's almost like the difference between a chef at a fine restaurant and a line cook at a diner or something like that.
Okay.
You can go into a dive bar, and maybe you're better off just getting a scotch and soda or a beer, But if you go to a craft cocktail bar, they're going to take, we're now in the midst of a cocktail renaissance. So you have more and more people taking this seriously as a craft, not just something where they know how to, tip forward the tap handle or open up a bottle of Bud Light or something like that. They know how to make a cocktail with fresh ingredients, fresh lime juice, fresh lemon juice, quality spirits, quality vermouth, and they're going to make it for you, to your specifications. But if you don't specify, they're going to make it, correctly based on a classic formula. Now, a lot of places, the guy has a goatee and he's wearing a vest and he looks like a hipster, and you want to believe they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't, but it's kind of a crapshoot. But it's a crapshoot in food also. I mean, I've had plenty of bad pizza, plenty of bad burgers, plenty of bad pasta dishes, and But I think no pun intended, the bar is certainly rising. We're getting much better quality drinks served to the public at these craft bars, and you're seeing more of that creeping into the mainstream. So.
And it's just really marvelous because really mixing a drink is an art. I grew up in Wisconsin. A couple of my uncles had resorts up around the Milwaukee and the Green Bay area. And when you would go there, the bartenders had such finesse. Anybody could come in and they could order anything. They'd make it, or else they would say, here, let me offer you one of our signature drinks, as you call them. And it was really outstanding because it was so tasty.
Oh, yeah. So the classic Manhattan is a marriage of either rye or bourbon whiskey, and the events that I'm going to be doing coming up, we're going to be using Four Roses bourbon, which is a tremendous good bourbon whiskey from Kentucky, and then Templeton rye is what we're going to be using in the rye-based Manhattan. And I've looked at archival recipe books and menus from the 1880s, and the original recipes are calling for rye whiskey in the Manhattan, but a lot of people are like, no, it's got to be bourbon, and that's fine. I mean, both work perfectly. The original formulas were 2-to-1 in favor of vermouth, where it was actually a weaker drink. It had less whiskey and more vermouth. Vermouth is a fortified wine, so it's much lower proof than bourbon or rye whiskey. And then you had varying different types of bitters that were used, but Angostura is sort of Angostura aromatic bitters is sort of the common bitters, but you also had orange bitters being used, or Boker's bitters, or different brands that were popular back in the 19th century.
Does the Manhattan? And gosh, this is going to again reveal that I know nothing about this, but you always have wine with a certain food. Does that apply to the mixed drinks also, or do you do the mixed drinks without food?
You have plenty of. In New Orleans, you mentioned this one event that I do called Tales of the Cocktail, and it's an amazing food and cocktails festival in New Orleans every July. They have what are called spirited dinners, and you have wine dinners, you now have beer dinners. You also have cocktail dinners where people, the chef will pair, this course goes well with the citrus in this daiquiri, or this course is going to go well with the dry vermouth that's in the martini, or something like that. You're going to have chefs and bartenders working together on paired dinners, and I've done a lot of them, and I find them to be successful sometimes, and sometimes I'd rather just have a glass of wine or a beer with dinner. But because I cook for myself a lot, and who wants to go to the trouble of getting up from the table and going and making another drink or that sort of thing? It's just, to me, wine is a better companion with dinner. But there are a lot of combinations that do work very well.
But the cultural experience of the cocktail itself is wonderful because you could turn an ordinary party into an affair of elegance because, the host or hostess takes the time to make the drinks and puts it in a nice glass and gives it to the guest, and then you feel like you're somewhere special.
Yeah, and, in the old days, cocktails were just that. They were a before-dinner drink, and usually pretty small. I mean, nowadays you go to Crate and Barrel and you buy these martini glasses that you could swim in. Almost.
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
huge. And if you fill that with a martini, you're going to be asleep, by the end of it, and it's going to be room temperature. I mean, it's chill your glasses, use smaller glasses, make smaller cocktails, and then if you have more than one, you can have a little variety instead of just devoting yourself to this giant, overly powerful drink.
Oh, sure.
Wow. That sounds like my iced tea glass.
Be pleasant by the end of it.
Let me squeeze in a phone call before we take the break. Philip Greene is our guest. His book is called The Manhattan: The Story of the First Modern Cocktail. Good morning. Thank you for waiting. You're on the air now with Philip Greene.
Yes, hello there. And one of my favorite cocktails is the Manhattan, and I always enjoyed it with an olive, not a cherry. But I want to make a comment that I'm sure you're going to agree with, is that you cannot make a good cocktail with cheap booze.
There are a few brands out there that are inexpensive and perfectly good, but it all depends on what you mean by cheap. That would be a matter of something. There are a number of rye whiskeys on the market that are lower price, and a lot of people use them as their house brand, and they're perfectly fine. A lot of people use the more expensive stuff for sipping, but yeah, there are cheap brands I wouldn't want any part of in a cocktail, and it's just a matter of taste but you're right. The olive, you actually do find that in an early 19th century recipe as one of the garnishes. Lemon peel was the original garnish specified. We got into the cherry around 1890, I think. There's a restaurant and a hotel in Chicago that claims, the Palmer House claims to be the birthplace of the cherry being used as a garnish, but there's an old book by a fellow named Tim Daly who advocates the use of an olive as a garnish.
There you go.
Okay.
Yep.
Salute.
Salute! All right.
I love that.
All right. The phone line's open, by the way, if you want to call and speak to our guest. The number is 622-9622. Philip Greene wrote the book, The Manhattan: The Story of the First Modern Cocktail. Philip, if you can hang in there, we've got to take a little break. We'd love to come back and continue talking to you. It'll be about a 3-minute break, it looks like. We'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. A delightful Wednesday with some sunshine and a high of 83 on the coast, 90 inland. Wednesday night will be partly cloudy, low 64 inland, 69 at the coast. For Thursday, partly sunny and very warm, high 84 at the coast, 91 inland. For Friday, sunshine and some clouds. There may be a late day shower or thunderstorm, high 86 at the coast, 92 inland. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
The sound of the bat cracking, the crowd cheering, the smell of overpriced but tasty hot dogs, the memories that will last a lifetime of your first baseball game with little Johnny. Your team wins. It was a great night until you get home. It's 9 p.m. and your wife says you have no water.
We have no water.
What do you do?
What do you do?
Rule number 1, don't panic. Remain calm. Okay, that's 2 rules.
We don't have time for jokes, funny man.
Okay, think back. On the way home, you heard a radio commercial.
Mike's Got Plumbing. If water runs through it, we do it.
Eureka! You saved the day. You remembered that Mike Scott Plumbing doesn't charge extra for nights, weekends, or holidays. You are a genius.
Hey, Mr. Genius, did you remember the phone number?
Of course you did. Remember, you're a genius. 352-237-2888. Because at Mike Scott Plumbing, if water runs through it, we do it. Even if water's not running through it at this particular moment. Mike Scott Plumbing.
Whether you're building it up or knocking it down, get it done, rent it now. Sunbelt Rentals is here to make your job a little easier. Our knowledgeable staff will help you find the right equipment for any job, big or small. Did you know that Sunbelt Rentals carries heaters, air conditioners, generators, lighting, traffic control, and so much more? So whether you're building it up or knocking it down, we've got the equipment you need. Get it done, rent it now. And right now, for a limited time, you can have it for less. Just by mentioning this ad, if you rent it Friday afternoon, you can keep it the whole weekend and only pay for one day. But this is a limited time offer, so stop into Sunbelt Rentals today, Northwest 27th, just a quarter mile east of I-75. For more information, just give us a call, 352-369-9101. 352-369-9101. Sunbelt Rentals. Get it done, rent it now. 352-369-9101.
FlySanford.com. Orlando Sanford International Airport. We are SFB. Simpler, faster, better. Simpler. With an easy-to-navigate, compact airport design. You won't need your running shoes. Faster. With quick processing times from parking to plane in minutes. Better. With more nonstop flights to your favorite places. And new destinations are being added all the time. For enjoyable travel, come to Orlando Sanford International Airport. We are SFB. Simpler, faster, better. Before you fly, FlySanford.com.
All right, 9 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Philip Greene is our guest. The book is called The Manhattan, The Story of the First Modern Cocktail. We speak to a lot of authors, Philip, and the one thing that I think I find just as interesting as the topic in most cases is the backstory as to how the book came to be, especially if it's a book that required research. And you sound really knowledgeable about mixed drinks, and yet it's my notes indicate that you had to do research. What did you discover? How did you research this particular subject?
This book, because of the time frame, I went back to old newspapers. You know, you subscribe to a few different old newspaper archives, and there are a lot that are free and available. You know, the Library of Congress has a great one, and different newspapers offer them. But also the old bartending books. The first bartending book ever published was in 1862, right? You know, in the heart of the Civil War. A fellow named Jerry Thomas wrote it, and it's a tremendous book. And then throughout the course of the 70s and 80s, you had more and more. A fellow named Harry Johnson wrote a book. O.H. Byron. So I collected as many old, 1880, 1890, all the way up to Prohibition, bartender guides that give you the recipe and background. So the book isn't just featuring on the Manhattan because, certainly there's a lot to say about it, but the book focuses on all the inspiration that it caused. It's sort of the face that lost 1,000 ships and all the different drinks.
Very interesting. So during Prohibition,
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. During Prohibition, did we have black market martinis or black market Manhattans?
You had black market everything, but the craft really suffered because up until Prohibition, you had bartenders who are like, today we have these celebrity chefs, Emeril Lagasse and Gordon Ramsay and people like that. You had celebrity bartenders back then who really knew what they were doing, but a lot of them left the country. They went over to London or down to Havana, because they wanted to continue their profession. So drinking became very secretive, surreptitious, speakeasies. Everything was simplified. You were drinking something just for the effect, not really for the craft and the taste. And highballs became very popular. It's so easy to quickly make a Scotch and soda or some whiskey, whiskey and soda, something like that. And it took us years to get out from under the idea that a well-made drink should be something made with some degree of thinking and effort, and not just quickly dash it off and toss it back.
Are drinks like the Manhattan or the Old Fashioned, are they universal around the world, or does each country put their own spin on it, or maybe not create that kind at all?
Well, there's a chapter in the book about how it was very hit or miss over in Europe and in South America and places like that, 100 years ago, where people would think they could get a well-made Manhattan in London or in Paris, and it's just disaster, or even places in the U.S. But, nowadays, I think you do find some uniformity. You might find, a twist on things in a particular, a foreign country. I know in Spain, they've really embraced the gin and tonic, and they've sort of made it a blank canvas for innovation. So you can find any number of delicious variations on the gin and tonic in Spain. It's just something that they've embraced. So
sometimes bartenders have a show aspect about them. I find that pretty entertaining. Do you like that?
It's fine if they're making a good drink while they're doing all that. It's called Flair, and there's
funny.
There's Flair in cooking and Flair in making drinks, and again, as long as the finished product is worth the show. I don't do any juggling or anything like that. I leave that up to the experts. But it can be very entertaining. But don't ask me to watch that Tom Cruise movie anytime soon.
Robin, didn't your son take a course?
Bartending course from the bartender school in Orlando?
Yeah, it was
Florida. Yeah.
He didn't end up going into that line of work, but
no, but he took the whole course.
He took the course. Yeah,
did the whole thing. Yeah, he enjoyed it.
So, do people still have the bars in their basements? Like I remember as a kid, everybody had a little like a home bar.
Yeah,
that's making a big comeback. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are into craft drinks, and they might go out for a well-made cocktail, but they're going to spend $12, $15 for it. Why not learn how to make them at home and have little parties and become sort of an amateur bartender themselves? I'm an attorney. I work at the Pentagon. I am not a bartender, but I have a bar at my dad's beach house, and it's a place to have fun and pretend you're a bartender and work on different things. And I think I make a pretty good drink. I'm not a professional bartender, but yeah, there are a lot of people who do that, and then it gets into the whole idea of decor and putting up. I have a lot of old photos and advertisements from magazines from the 1940s and 30s, 40s, 50s, and I'll buy old records, Sinatra records or Nat King Cole records, and put them on the wall. It just, you're trying to create a certain vibe, and it's a lot of fun to have people over and have a drink and talk. And
yeah, that was the generation that really made that kind of hip, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Rat Pack and
do you remember the TV show Bewitched? Remember Darren would always come home, get a drink.
Yeah. I used to do that when I come home.
You used to do that
when I come home from work. Yeah.
Get a mixed drink.
Yeah, I'd make one and do that. What do you think about the bars that have, like, they will line up the shot glasses on the bar and they'll put one form of alcohol in there and then another type, I can't remember the name, I think it's got a number, and then they light it and then they serve a beer and then you got to pick up the shot glass, dunk it in the beer and drink it that way.
There's a lot of that sort of flair around presentation. The original drink that that layered drink that it's called the Pousse Café actually goes back to New Orleans in the 1850s, where you have different liqueurs of different density that can sit on top of each other. So it's almost like a layer cake of at the bottom you might have a really heavy liqueur, and then farther up, creme de menthe or maraschino liqueur, et cetera, et cetera. And you're supposed to sip it. You pour it into the glass with the backside of the spoon, so it doesn't go down to the next level. But then you're supposed to sip it off one level by level. But the flaming of the drink. I mean, I'll take an orange peel or a lemon peel and light a match to it and squeeze it to flame the oils, so they're the oils from the peel, so they're on top of the drink, and it's a nice little show. Shooters are another thing. I mean, if you want sort of a celebratory shot, that's fine. Not my thing, but it's fun to do. Sure. And you have the glassware all stacked up, so the drink will trickle from one down to the next, like a pyramid or something like that.
There's really an art to this, isn't there?
Yeah.
So if you could go back to Sinatra 1940 and give him a Manhattan from today, would he be able to tell the difference? Would there be a difference in the one he was drinking back then and the one you could bring him from 2016?
I'd like to think no. I mean, it's from 1940, so you're 7 years out of Prohibition. American whiskey makers were back online.
It's about the same.
World War II didn't come along and complicate things yet again. He was a big Jack Daniels drinker, and I think Jack Daniels was made a little better back in the day. But, I wasn't around to prove
Fascinating topic, Philip. The Manhattan is the book. I guess you get it anywhere books are sold. Thank you so much, Philip, for being on the air with us today.
My pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
That was fun. We'll take a little break. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. As Donald Trump chalks up more wins in Nebraska and West Virginia, questions for the Republican Party.
Whether they're ready to support their party's presumptive nominee. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell meets with Trump here tomorrow to talk about winning the general election.
We know the alternative is 4 more years, just like the last 8.
House Speaker Paul Ryan has not yet endorsed Trump, and his office is trying to downplay tomorrow.